Hello there, and welcome to this nice and cozy chat about the more cuter and cozy side of video game development, looking at more humbler scopes. And I hope you're nice and settled, got something cozy. I'd recommend maybe grabbing a cup of tea or coffee or anything to help you settle down and relax with this chat. So pause if you haven't and grab something. But otherwise, let's get going. This is talk about the rise of low-stress gaming, or why I think you should be paying attention to wholesome games. My name is Harry. I'm currently running a small indie studio in the north of Sweden called Cold Sector, and I think that wholesome games have a huge potential, and that is exactly why I'm making a wholesome game in a moment. So I would like to share everything about them, why I think they're exciting, and hopefully you can get excited about them too, if you're not already. So the overview of this talk, we're going to start with an introduction about what they are, what makes a wholesome game, and then dive into some common elements, looking at the type of people who play this game, talk about why they play these games. That's mostly to do with like stress factors, and then start to tackle maybe are we looking at an industry change? Why are people flocking to these types of games? Then also what these success stories of wholesome games can mean for fellow developers, publishers, or industry veterans, investors like us. And why I believe they're a good fit for developers and why they're even greater fit for smaller indie studios. Then talking more about the more marketability side of wholesome games. I'm going to dive into the discoverability factors and then cover what is different about this word cozy. Maybe you've heard of wholesome, maybe you've heard of cozy. How do they overlap? How do they don't? We'll dive into that too. And then, finally, why I feel that wholesome games could be a good fit for you or your studio or your investment company or whoever you are. Maybe you just want to play them. Then I will end this talk with a quick reasons about why I chose to develop a wholesome game and how it's looking for us. We would usually take questions, but it is a remote chat. But hopefully on Discord I can take them later, on the Nordic Discord. And along the way, I'll be making lots of name drops. I hope you see what I did there. So take pictures, take screenshots of anything that seems exciting for you, and hopefully, if not anything else, you come away from this chat with a couple games to add to your wish list. With that said, let's get going. So what exactly are wholesome games? These are games that typically have a humble scope. They're not looking to be a grand adventure and have lots of game mechanics packed into them. They generally have innovative gameplay, so they can just essentially focus on one core mechanic. Like in Lottonauts here, pretty much the main mechanic is just cleaning up the ocean and making things look nice. They always have unique identities, pretty much. This means like having very beautiful or cozy little graphics that really sticks out. It doesn't need to be high textures or high anything. Generally, people who play these games are welcoming to like a lot more humble scopes. So as long as you got something that stands out, it doesn't need to be detailed or put too much energy into it, but it generally will help the game find its audience better. They generally also have hopeful themes of comfort, warmth, and relaxation, to name a few. Essentially, there's nothing screaming at you or worrying you or stressing you. These are games that are easy to come home to and easy to play whenever strikes the mood. Generally, everything about the game is cozy, right down to the art and sound. So, again, you don't need to have any like intense production going on. You can just have very warm or very limited palettes and quite some minimalistic sounds, perhaps, in these types of games. And there's a general complete lack of violence. You could potentially have degrees of violence, but as long as it doesn't seem too graphic or evil, anything like that. It could be a bit slapstick perhaps. But again, it's all subjective. A wholesome game for one person might be different for a wholesome game to another. But it definitely is a load of common factors in general. So, common gameplay elements, a lot of these types of games share. Generally, they would have one leading star mechanic, which makes it a fairly good fit for indie developers, because then you just need to focus on making one aspect shine. Here in Alba, that's generally just tidying up and cleaning up the village, lots of small interactions, so you feel that you're making impacts on a local community. Quite a lot of these games are also life simulations to really fit you into a sense of community and like a part of your environment, part of your surroundings. So generally you would have a lot of character interactions and maybe some branching narratives here and there. Again, reinforcing this community side is a lot of dialogue in general, and themes of growing and nurturing. So you might often find like farming aspects and types of these games, like literal growing and nurturing, but also it could just mean anything in general that leads to growth and warmth in a community. And then, like in contrast to more AAA games, wholesome games would generally have open worlds, but condensed. So instead of having to walk for ages to get to the next place when there's maybe nothing that stands out in particular in a way, like, I don't know, a game like Skyrim. I'm not trying to say there's nothing, but to me it feels a bit bland and empty. But these games have a lot of like condensed mini environments with something fun around each corner, or like some cozy art or some cozy visual at least. And then relaxed exploration that goes along with it. It's kind of trying to simulate what it feels like to be getting a little lost in a local park or woods when you're a kid. It doesn't mean that you've gone on a grand adventure, but it feels like one when you're that young. Then again, you could have like a very simple, like rewarding gameplay features like cleaning, sorting, and fixing. It doesn't need to be mechanic intense or coding intense. These could be very simple interactions, but just like a bit of VFX and SFX oomph could go a long way to make you smile and feel good about what you're doing. Also, these games often favor like self-expression of the player that is playing them through some open-ended progress goals. So that could just be as simple as like some branching narrative where you get to decide a little bit how your player talks, or anything like that. And in general, you'll see like a big focus towards more satisfying gameplay instead of challenging. So this is trying to make gamers not get frustrated, not get too stressed, instead just feel good about everything that they're doing. This doesn't mean that these games are devoid of challenge, but that the challenge is more optional than anything. It can be races, but if you don't beat the high score, it's not a big deal. So what type of gamers are playing these wholesome games? Generally, wholesome games are tailoring to a new audience that is looking to escape stress and not add to it. In general, these are primarily younger and female gamers, as well as underrepresented minorities. So if you're making wholesome games, you're catering to a more distinct group of gamers. But in general, many people are seeing the world as dark enough to add yet another apocalyptic gore fest to the list of games that you want to play. Times are maybe getting a bit more stressful, a bit more political, and people are flocking towards cozy experience in generals. This is what I'm talking about, the sea change that's coming along. And stress really is a growing factor amongst gamers and younger audiences nowadays. But what's doing it? Younger audiences are experiencing increasing isolation that is also stretching up to the ages and generations, especially with work from home ethics and anything that is brought on by social media. There is greater uncertainty about the future nowadays, and hustle culture and more precarious job roles are leading people into more stressful situations already that they don't want to be coming home and maybe blasting out in doom. And then, of course, there's a lot of housing and financial worries about in this current climate. And people finding, because of all this hustling, because of all this worrying, because of having to run about more and be active on social media and all of these things, there's just less time to relax. So when they do, it's got to count. And yeah, the big elephant in the room, of course, is the COVID pandemic, which kind of heightened all of these factors. And of course, plenty of younger gamers have grown up with this being a huge factor in their lives and has shaped the way that they look at the world, the way they want to interact with games, everything. So keep that in mind. And in general as well, like you can see here on the right that a lot of stress has got to do with generational factors because of COVID in particular, as well as isolations and everything like that. Younger gamers are stressing that they are feeling much more anxious, much more preoccupied with stressful factors than older generations. And harkening back to the COVID, do you remember which game performed especially well during the pandemic? This would usually be an open question, so I'll wait a bit, let you think, but hopefully the answer is on the tip of your tongue. It was Animal Crossing. So since the release of Animal Crossing, there's been like a noticeable effect in the type of games that people want to play. You can see here on its unit sales that New Horizons, the Switch game that broke the charts, has quickly outranked basically the entire Animal Crossing franchise in, just 4 years now. So that's crazy statistics to keep in mind. I think it's also pretty high on the highest selling list of all time. I might have it here in the quick stats. So Animal Crossing grossed $2 billion in its first year. Crazy statistics. And went on to, become the 14th highest selling game of all time. To put that into perspective, plenty of these games on its highest selling list above it have been around a lot longer. I think it is the most recent game on that list. So it's competing against even very famous Nintendo titles as well that come from the same company, like Pokemon Red and Blue. I think it's even maybe gone beyond those. It also broke a lot of digital sales records within its first month with 5 million copies sold. So people were downloading this game and not going out. Also a big change in how we consume media nowadays. But most importantly, it brought in a ton of new fans and created essentially a new line of gamers who are more preoccupied with wholesome and cozier content. And it fostered renewed interest or additional interest in relaxed gameplay experiences. Maybe there wasn't so many games like this about before, at least that was breaking the mainstream, but you can bet that now there's a much higher influx and a much higher attention paid to these types of games because of the Animal Crossing effect. And yes, Animal Crossing, reminder, did all of this while being a Nintendo Switch exclusive. this game is not on Steam, this game is not available on Windows. People flocked to this game and bought consoles especially to play it because it offered such a nice resort away from the, more stressful, isolated lives at that point in time. And it continues to do so. So what can we learn from this? Well, of course, there's a big audience for games like this. And Animal Crossing may have changed an industry-wide sea change, with people wanting to consume more wholesome and cozier content. Many more similar games will arise. There's been a great influx of games since already, and this is just the iceberg. Indie games, of course, have a great head start. The most recent successes, of course, are ones that have been able to develop a game within the 4 years that came, and that would be indie markets, especially because they have a shorter development pipeline. Perhaps games are going to foster much more aspects of social simulation and community factors, and gamers are very receptive to these types of themes and love to see them in games. Also, we can learn that non-linear and non-demanding gameplay suits many lifestyles. Animal Crossing is a game that you can pick up every day, and there's something new because we're having like a 365-day recycling year factor, or evolving year factor. And that sort of gameplay lends well to busy lives. And yeah, of course, Nintendo is worth a decent shot if you're aiming to work in this genre. If people have bought a console to play Animal Crossing, they're probably looking for more wholesome and cozy content out there. So why are wholesome games a good fit for developers in particular? Well, for one, it's a fairly non-competitive market. People who play these games are eager to not just consume the one, but go from one wholesome game to the next. There's no real people in this industry trying to make enemies, trying to see other people as huge contenders, huge competitors. In general, it's very inclusive, very friendly market. So it feels like a great place to be. Because of its emphasis on a bit more wholesome, a bit more humble gameplay aspects, you can expect perhaps a shorter runtime of your game's length and a shorter dev time. These games also don't need to be feature-rich, so you can spend more time just focusing on getting your game out there than on adding huge amounts of things to it. They're also a great fit because the audience is very receptive to simpler, humbler graphics and don't mind if everything's not perfect. They're also very early access friendly, so you can start to grow a community early and scale up, keep on perhaps adding more once you have got a nice base in mind or delivered. And players of these games generally aren't going to review bomb you or get aggravated about the game. These are people who are very accepting, patient, and understanding. So very fun and very rewarding to make games for. And yeah, because of that, these games are often highly reviewed on Steam. Some of the highest rated games on Steam currently are small indie titles like A Short Hike, which I think is around number 16 or number 17. And also, what's good news is that there's becoming some specialized publishers out there for these games. already looking through Nordic Meet and Match, I've seen a couple people listing just wholesome games on their spectre of games that they want to be looking out for. And these games are especially great for small indie studios. This is because people who consume these media are really interested in authentic experiences, which indie games, of course, deliver. When they're just made by a small team, you're going to get a lot more of that personal touch. They're also fantastic because experimental graphics and gameplay are fine, so then you can sort of like flex your creative bones and maybe get something out of it too. There's also not a ton to develop. You can just hone in on just one like interest in your life. Maybe you really love Asian cooking, and you can essentially craft a simple game just about that one tiny thing. Or perhaps growing little like shrubs or anything like that. As evidenced here by Cinnabunny and Spilled, maybe you've heard of them or seen them on LinkedIn. These games are also fairly popular on Kickstarter with very modest budgets. Spilled was fully funded in just 12 hours, and Cinnabunny maybe not quite as ambitious, but got there in 9 days, which is still fantastic. There's a lot of people looking out for these games in mainstream culture. These aren't just like discovered through very particular subreddits or communities. People consuming games on Kickstarter in mainstream are coming across these games and wanting to get involved. They have a very wide appeal. There's also potential to be showcased in Wholesome Games media. There's plenty of YouTube outlets and conferences out there that can help share your game further and grow a community. So you're not in the dark if you're making these types of games, and because it's maybe more of a niche genre, you kind of got a head start to get like showcased and get this sort of like standout element that you need to get your game in people's hands. And for an indie studio, it's especially a great resource, a great way to prove yourself and get game number one out of the door. There's a lot of publishers out there that won't even pay much attention to you until you've reached game one and shown that you've got the resources, the pipeline, the team to deliver and get stuff done. So it's a great proving ground and way to maybe start towards a successful company. As also should be said, a lot of indie developers don't even get to game one. So having a more humble and wholesome scope is a good way to go to ensure that you get to that point, or at least have a better chance of doing it. So how do people generally find out about these wholesome games? As mentioned, there is directs out there. Wholesome Games is an actual like organization that hosts wholesome directs. As you can see on Steam, they have 78,000 followers and are well known for delivering and sharing cozy games. There's official social media, which has a lot of people paying attention to it. Twitter with over 100,000 people, TikTok even bigger, closer to 300,000. There's celebrations and events and curations on Steam itself, with that bigger audience directly following it and more who happen upon it. There's a lot of YouTube fan content out there, a lot of people specializing just in wholesome and cozy content and wanting to bring eyes to your game without you having to pay for advertisement slots or anything like that. And also these games function great as recommendations on Steam. If you tick the cozy boxes, then you're going to get recommended from one cozy game to the next. and that is how people consume these media. So having a short, cozy game means that you're gonna be eyed up to be the one next on the wish list where they take off. And also a big factor is just word of mouth based on how these games make you feel, in contrast to maybe what mechanics or features that a game have. Wholesome games tailor towards more like this personal touch, so it's good to zoom in and focus on how you want your game to make other people feel, because that is a big factor. And yeah, I mentioned cozy quite a lot. I'm throwing it in fairly often when I say wholesome too, sorry about that. But what exactly is cozy? Is it different from wholesome? Well, to be frank, it's basically just another buzzword. There may be slight differences, but it's just another way that people learn to find these sorts of games and categorize them together, like rock and pop. But slightly different to wholesome, it can be a bit more lifestyle driven. You'll see that hashtags like cozy desk setup can trend, and this is like a factor, just having a cozy environment around you while you play your games, becoming a bit more zen, And because of this, cozy has a bit more to do with aesthetics in general, and more like subdued color palettes and stuff like that. Cozy is also not tied to any curators or organizations, so it's more of like a public fan word than anything. And while maybe wholesome hashtags don't trend as much, cozy definitely does, and leads to a lot more social media content. But again, cozy definitely gels well with this model of non-competitivity, and does great for getting your game noticed in a sort of like list format, like you can see here with the 75 absolute best cozy games for Switch. It helps people find your game. And then another big news is it's quite big on Reddit. You can find the subreddit Cozy Gamers, and this Reddit is also fantastic because they're quite open to people sharing their games, which is quite a notorious feature of Reddit, that people generally don't like self-promotion. But on Cozy Gamers, they're quite chill and relaxed about it. But why should you in particular make wholesome games? Well, there's a lot of arguments to be made for spreading better inclusivity. Sorry. There's a very strong presence of women and young female gamers who would love to consume more and more of these types of media, and it'd be great to give them like a better base, a better a room to grow, room to explore. And of course, there's a lot of marginalized groups who are looking for games like this. So you have like a strong audience base of maybe gamers that you weren't tailoring before, and it's important to tailor to these people who maybe are a bit more forgotten. So it's not only a widely ignored community, but an industry too, and it is growing. So it is great to invest in them, because maybe you can be like the person who stands out. Gamers are growing up and they're looking for more diverse activities. Sometimes just shooting it doesn't cut it. People are getting a bit more bored of the same old, and they're looking towards having more diverse gameplays, more diverse things to tick off on the Steam wish list. And personally, I feel like it's a necessary evolution for games. We need to be more open, more inclusive, and focus more on community aspects. Gaming is growing up. People are taking it more seriously. People are seeing that there's a lot of benefits to playing games that makes you more of an open, more of a cultured person, and can see like the more community-based sides of things. Like once you started playing a game like Flock, maybe you go to their Discord and find a whole a group of friends based around that experience. And of course, it's good to make wholesome games because you're celebrating diversity by doing it. Diversity. But wait, take my word for it. Who am I? So, of course, I'm very invested in wholesome games because I'm making one. So, this is my game up on the screen, A Line Away. It's a cozy island adventure game, and I wanted to make it because I think it's important to spread a lot of these wholesome and community-based themes. And I'll be showing it at Nordic. If you see me around, I'll be wearing a Hawaiian shirt and a flower necklace, so it should be easy to spot. And you can look into my company called Sector or scan this QR code if you want to learn more now. Thanks. I've also had a lot of interest from younger, more promising devs that have come out of Generation Z. I was very surprised when I was pitching this game around, trying to get more interest in it, but I got a lot of interest from Gen Z interns. And that was a great feeling to have sort of the future of gaming, getting excited about what type of game I was making. I'm also constantly told by everyone around me in the industry how fast our development cycle is. And this has got a lot to do with the more humbler scopes and gameplay elements that we're trying to work with. And having said that, and having gone down this journey now, and looking back, I know we could have gone a lot simpler, and I'm pretty sure that the second game is going to have an even faster development cycle. And generally, I felt personally when we had to make another game that it was just the smartest and safest move for us to take. Even if we don't find a publisher or investor, if it's a fairly safe product to make and it's going to likely get done without a huge pipeline. So you can cut your horizons short, maybe have some features on the nice-to-have list, but then on your must-to-have list, you should have it all delivered potentially within a year or less. More than anything, it's generally comforting to make a game that is cozier, I can assure you. It's not always nice to show up to work and work on something that is a bit grim or a little bit more undefined, a bit abstract. And yes, those cozy vibes definitely do permeate into the office and your way of life. And yeah, that's everything. I hope you've come away from this with a nice vibe of what makes a wholesome or cozy game. And if anything else, a couple wish lists in mind. And I've dropped a few more games here at the end. And if you're about the Nordic, I'd love to connect, talk more about wholesome and cozy games. And if not, you can always contact me here on the Discord. Hopefully I'm available for a Q&A at one point. I'm pretty sure that's part of the plan. And finally, thank you to Nordic for giving me this platform to talk about an area of game that maybe is a bit neglected, but I feel should be getting a lot more focus. And it's growing and growing. So I think this may be becoming a bigger part of the industry in general as we go along. So yeah, thank you, Nordic, and thank you anyone who's listened this far. Hope you have a nice day, and bye.